Hey everybody, good morning. It's a great day to be together and celebrate Easter. Christians all over the world this morning are saying an Easter greeting to each other, and it goes like this. When I say he is risen, you say he is risen indeed. He is risen. He is risen indeed. Let's say those words together again. He is risen. He is risen indeed. That greeting just helps God's people acknowledge and remember that God defeats death. The people of God who had followed Jesus, they were so sad on this Sunday morning. They had watched their king, their master, their teacher be mistreated by the crowds and killed by the soldiers. Remember, they took a crown of thorns and jammed it on his head and made fun of him. You say you're the king of the Jews. Well, then save yourself. This pokey thorns, that would be so hard and it would hurt. And it must have been so hard for God's people to watch their king be mistreated. They've heard and seen the soldiers use big nails to put Jesus on the cross. Oh my goodness. They had to watch their friend be hurt. Their hearts are sad. They don't know what they're going to do. What are we going to do? Our king is gone. And remember, finally, they have lovingly wrapped Jesus' body with linen cloth and then laid him in the tomb, which was carved into the side of a hill, and a big stone was rolled in front of it. And so let's see what happens. That's the beginning of our story. That's what's happened this week. So let's see. But as we hear the word of the Lord, let's get our minds ready to hear God's word. Let's get our hearts ready to hear God's word. Let's get our whole bodies ready to hear God's word. And let's remember to listen for something new. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am God. Let's hear the word of the Lord together. We're going to be in the book of Matthew in the end of chapter 27 and the beginning of chapter 28. So here's my Bible. This is the first part of the Bible, the Old Testament, and the New Testament is toward the end, and Matthew is the very first book in the New Testament. So let's see what happens. We're going to start at the end when they've buried Jesus. Joseph of Arimathea has taken Jesus' body, wrapped it in a long sheet of clean linen cloth. He placed it in his own new tomb, which had been carved out of rock. Then he rolled a great stone across the entrance and left. Both Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were sitting across the tomb, watching and waiting. Their friend has died. So the next day, on the Sabbath, which is the day of rest, the leading priest went to see Pilate, who had been the one who had said Jesus would be crucified. They told Pilate, "Sir, do you remember what the deceiver," they called Jesus a deceiver. Do you remember what he said when he was still alive? He said, "After 3 days, I will rise from the dead." So we request that you put a guard on the tomb until after the 3rd day. This will prevent his disciples and followers from coming and stealing his body and then telling everybody that he was raised from the dead. If that happens, it's going to be worse than it's ever been. So Pilate replied, "You take some guards and secure the tomb as best you can." So they sealed the tomb and posted guards to protect it. So look, here's a picture of what it might have looked like. You see, it's carved out of stone in the side of a wall. Guards are placed there because Jesus's enemies are thinking, his disciples might try to do something tricky. So the guards are there. Let's see what else happens. Early on Sunday morning, as the new day was dawning, can you imagine what that new day must have looked like? Was the sun shining? Were the birds singing? Was there a gentle breeze? Even though they were sad, they had a plan. Jesus' followers had a plan. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went out to visit the tomb. Suddenly, there was a great earthquake. What do you know about earthquakes? I wonder what that felt like. Was the ground shaking? Was the rocks rattling? I wonder. There was a great earthquake. For an angel of the Lord came down from heaven, rolled away the stone, and sat on it. His face shone like lightning, and his clothing was as white as snow. So look at this picture. The angel rolled the stone away and sat upon it. He was shining with the light of heaven. Look at the guards. Oh my goodness. Let's see what happened to them. What do you think's happening right here? I wonder what's going on. Let's see what God's word says. Matthew chapter 28, verse 4. Well, the guards shook with fear when they saw him, and they fell into a dead faint. They just fell down and passed out because maybe they were so afraid. Maybe they were worried. Maybe they didn't understand. I wonder what they were thinking when they saw the angel. Then the angel spoke to the women. See the women, they come and they see that the stone has been rolled away. Then the angel spoke to the women and he said this. Say it with me. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. Remember another time the angel spoke those words to Joseph, Jesus' earthly father? At the very beginning of Matthew, the angel tells Joseph, don't be afraid to take Mary as your wife. And remember the angel Gabriel said to Mary when he told her that she was going to have a baby, don't be afraid. So the beginning of Matthew starts with an angel saying, don't be afraid. And the end of Matthew has an angel telling the women, don't be afraid. So let's see in verse 5, Matthew 28, verse 5. Then the angel spoke to the women. Don't be afraid, he said. I know that you're looking for Jesus who was crucified, but he isn't here. He is risen from the dead, just as he said would happen. Come, see where his body was lying. So he invited them to come into the tomb and look and see where his body was. And it was empty. Now your job is to go quickly and tell his disciples that he is risen from the dead and he is going ahead of you to Galilee. You will see him there. Remember what I have told you. So the angel says, go tell everyone, go tell Jesus' followers that he's alive, just as he said. And so look, they start going to tell. They leave the tomb. I wonder what they were thinking. Can you imagine? I wonder what they were thinking. So the women ran quickly from the tomb. They were frightened, but they were also filled with great joy. And they rushed away to give the disciples the angel's message. And as they went, Jesus met them and greeted them. They ran to him. They grasped his feet and worshiped him. So the women, they bowed down before Jesus. They touched his feet. He was real. It wasn't a ghost. It was Jesus. It was his body. It was his. He was alive. Then Jesus said to them, don't be afraid. There's that word again. Don't be afraid. Go tell my brothers to leave for Galilee, and they will see me there. I wonder, what must they have been thinking? What are some words that you can use to describe what you think the women were feeling as Jesus spoke to them? So listen to this. The story doesn't end there. As the women were on their way to tell Jesus' disciples, some of the guards went into the city. So the guards woke up. Jesus is gone. The tomb is open. There's been an earthquake. They saw an angel. So they went into the city and told the leading priests what had happened. A meeting with the elders was called, and they decided to give the soldiers a large bribe. They said, "We'll pay you this money if you say that Jesus' disciples came into the night while we were sleeping and stole his body." And the guards did that. But you know what? It did not stop Jesus' followers from proclaiming the wonderful news. He is risen. Jesus is alive. He is risen just as he said. Jesus is alive. That is good news. The story doesn't end there, but we're going to stop there today. So here's what I want you to do this week as you wonder about this story and as you think about hearing something new. This story of the resurrection is in all 4 of the Gospels. It's in Matthew 28, Mark 16, Luke chapter 24, John chapter 20. So look at those. And sometime this week, read those stories with your family and see what you notice is different in each one. Because it's pretty interesting. They don't all say it happened exactly the same way. Because when you tell a story sometimes, what's important to me may not be exactly the same thing that was as important to you. But it's the word of the Lord. And so read those and write down what you notice that is a little bit different in the different stories of Jesus rising from the dead. And write down what's exactly the same. Write down your wonder ideas. I wonder what it was like to see the empty tomb. I wonder. What do you wonder about this story? Let's say our proclamation, our Easter proclamation one more time. He is risen. He is risen indeed. This week, love God with your whole heart and live in the good news that Jesus is alive. I love you. I miss you. And I hope I see you next week in the children's wing at Highland. Bye.